what that looked like for him as a leader, he was having one-on-one conversations with people, but he wasn't letting us all have a big debate and discussion in the room together. And so it was like a hub and spoke model. Like, I'm going to talk to Galen, and I'm going to talk to Bobby, and I'm going to talk to Katie. And really, it would have been more productive to have everybody in the conversation together. Because when you avoid conflict, or I should say just separate, but like conflict, debate, discussion, when you're having that conflict about an idea and not a person, that leads to a better idea.
From humble beginnings, Insurance Claim HQ has grown to one of the largest property casualty firms in the country. We didn't do it alone, and you shouldn't either. Every week, we're talking to claims professionals and top experts from all over, all to help you grow your business and make you stronger. Let's level up together. I'm Galen Hare. Welcome to the Level Up Claims Podcast. Leadership isn't just about being liked, it's about being effective. But in high-stress industries like insurance claims, construction, and law, too many professionals fall into the trap of being too nice. Maybe you avoid hard conversations. Maybe you let things slide to keep the peace. Maybe you're feeling quietly resentful while others walk all over you. If that hits close to home, you're not alone. And you're not doomed to stay stuck. Today, we're joined by Katie Armentrout, founder of Peoplefluence, a leadership expert who believes that nice is not a strategy. With decades of experience in corporate leadership and training, Katie helps professionals stop people-pleasing and start leading with courage. She's here to break down why real influence starts where nice ends and how to build respect without sacrificing relationships. Let's dive in. Katie, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I am super pumped to have you. I was obviously really sad we couldn't make the summit work this year, but we're definitely going to see about next year. Yeah, so much. So like, before we jump into it, your background is, I wouldn't say like surprising for what you do now, but I think it's so important. So like, let's talk about how you got into the path of like coaching leadership.
Yeah, there is a complete lack of it. Is really that's complete lack of it. So I call myself a recovering corporate person. So worked in big companies. Well, I had a long stretch for 13 years at one. And while I got promoted up where I was a director of North American sales, and I realized I was really frustrated. Like, I will just say that. And I left the company just out of frustration. I was there for 13 years and I didn't know why. Like, I didn't know why I was frustrated, because I liked all the people. So they were good people. They were ethical people, not a lot of jerks. And I loved what I did and like our mission and the products that we had. But I couldn't, and everyone was nice. Like, they were nice. I thought, but I was so frustrated. And then it really wasn't. And so I left the company, I had no plan. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Pat Lencioni. And I realized, wow, that explains everything that was going on there. Like, I was finally able to put language to the frustrations that I was having. And when I was in that frustration at the company, like, the simplest way to say it is I didn't have the language. I didn't have the words. I didn't have any structure. And so the lack of it and not having it and then learning it is now what I want to like share with everyone and with leaders. Like, there is a better way to lead, think different about it. And there's a lot of tools that you can use. And that really wasn't the conversation that was happening at the company that I was in at the time.
That's fair. And that's the thing, is like, you're not, let's just jump into this. I think it's the easiest way to get there. You are not the standard leadership coach. And I was lucky enough to like hear this over like in bits and pieces over a few days. Right. And I even got to hear you talk to other people about it. And the one thing that consistently came up is like, nice is another word for afraid. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I teach leaders how to stop being nice. And that is because that's what I realized again in a lot of the teams that I was in. People were nice. And they think like that's how you're supposed to be. But nice versus kind, nice is just really polite. It's about pleasing. It's more people pleasing than it is anything. And it's not telling people what they need to hear. It's not developing people. It's avoiding conflict. And so I dive into so like traditional, like a lot of leadership development, I do talk a lot about conflict. I'm very effective with adults. I'm not at all effective with children, specifically my own, but I work with adults. So apply at your own risk with kids. But yeah, and when I look back, people were just, a key concept that I learned is there's something called the conflict continuum. And so we know, like on one side of it, like shame and blame is bad, right? Like attacking someone because you don't like their idea that's bad. We know it's destructive and toxic. And then, so we tend to think, well, the opposite of like, if I avoid conflict, that must be good or that's better. And actually, research shows that both are equally destructive. And so when I say I teach leaders how to stop being nice, nice is another word for conflict avoidant. And so what I help people do with their teams is strike that healthy balance in the middle of how do we engage in a healthy conflict, which means debating and discussing and not attacking or avoiding.
So well said. So yeah, biggest takeaway, guys, at home, because do not come back and say Galen told me to be rude. They're not the same thing. Don't be nice. But I think it's so important. So like, let's talk about that, because you actually saw some of this yourself, like live. And it's one of the things that led you to that. So like, can you give us an example? Obviously, we don't need all your prior job secret details, but can you give us an example of a leader who was nice and that caused the team to underperform?
Yes. Yes. And I will say, just on the point of not being rude, just to back you up, I'm not saying to be rude either, but I realize the opposite of nice isn't being mean. The opposite of nice is being courageous. And so it's having the courage to give people the feedback they need to do their job and to perform better. And it's leaning into those uncomfortable and awkward conversations in the right way. So just, to back you up, don't be rude, but be courageous and approach it in the right way.
And we're gonna talk more about, I think, what you call courageous leadership in a little bit, because I think it's so important and it's so beautiful as just a leadership skill set. And I think, frankly, people identify with that. Anyone can identify with being courageous, right? Like that's a perfectly fine adjective. Like I am good with that. I will never complain if someone calls me courageous. Like, I feel like the lion, but I think it's so important. Like what is an example of like where someone was just so nice, they were so conflict avoidant that their team started to underperform?
Yeah, absolutely. So just anecdotally, I think about the 3 worst leaders that I've had in my career, and I'll go in specifics on one of them. But just the 3 worst leaders, meaning like I was the most frustrated when I was on their team. And 2 of the 3 were 2 of the nicest guys that you will ever meet on this planet. Like that goes to like they're ethical people, they're good people, they're very well intentioned. Only one was a jerk. So I'm not talking about the jerks, but so the leader, one that I worked for a while ago, he truly was like, he was always happy. He was smiling. He was optimistic. He really cared about people. Like he cared about everyone on the team. And I was on the leadership team, but he did not know. He was just such a pleaser. He did not know how to have conflict. So we were not having discussions. He would avoid conflict at all costs. So what that looked like for him as a leader, he was having one-on-one conversations with people, but he wasn't letting us all have a big debate and discussion in the room together. And so it was like a hub and spoke model. Like I'm going to talk to Galen and I'm going to talk to Bobby and I'm going to talk to Katie. And really it would have been more productive to have everybody in the conversation together. Because when you avoid conflict, or I should say just separate, but like conflict, debate, discussion, when you're having that conflict about an idea and not a person, that leads to a better idea. Especially like picture, like we've all been in cross-functional meetings. Like when you're hearing from marketing and sales and supply chain and finance, like that's what makes the overall plan better. So a leader who avoids conflict, they're preventing all that discussion from happening. So number one, you don't end up with the best plan. You don't end up with the best results. And what you're creating is silos. So by not letting, or when you bring people together, if you're not engaging in discussion, so if your meetings are really boring and you're never discussing or making decisions, then that's what leads to the poor performance of the team as a whole.
That makes a lot of sense. Sorry, so many things started running through my mind because no, you're so right. And I agree. There are these leaders that they seem to want to, if they think there's a problem, if they think there's a potential problem, especially if they think they might be involved in it, they try to hold individual meetings like that hub and spoke model you talked about, because what they don't want is, well, Galen says, well, Katie really needs to get back to us on this because I can't do this project. And then Bobby says, well, Galen's holding me up, and they don't want everyone in a room, especially if they're part of the problem. They definitely don't want everyone in a room. But then what happens is nothing happens, because then I get more frustrated that I had this meeting with my supervisor and told him I really need this thing from Katie to do my job, and then nothing happened. So now I'm not sure if my supervisor's not doing their job, if Katie's not doing her job, and then Bobby's sitting over here really frustrated because his perception is waiting on something totally different. And maybe you have a perfectly good reason you haven't produced this thing, right? Maybe you're waiting on something else, or you weren't aware. And instead of just putting us all in a room and having the freaking conversation so we can get to the bottom of what needs to happen, they don't do it. They don't do it at all. And I think it is. I think it's conflict avoidance, like completely.
Mm-hmm. And even in those one-on-one conversations, because you have to think, like the nice leader, as I call them, they're a pleaser. And so if you and I are having this discussion, about a work project, then it's easy for that pleaser, like they want to say yes to you and agree with you, and like, well, I want to do this, and be like, yeah, okay. And so when you do that so the leader does not hold a strong position, they can be easily swayed with each conversation. So then you end up with a complete lack of clarity. So not only like you're not having conflict, but there's a different clarity. So if you guarantee, like when you do bring all those people together, or you ask them separately, if you surveyed them, like what project is most important right now? Ask them any question, you will get different answers across the board. Of like, what are we working on? I don't know, I'm working on this. Aren't you? Isn't that important to you? You'll get a list of different projects, different priorities. And even within the same project, okay, what's most important? So by not bringing everyone together, you cannot get everyone on the same page separately. You have to, tackle it together as like one team from the top. Not even in the middle of the organization, but it all flows down from the leader sets the tone, and their executive team sets the tone. So another tangent we could go off, but like I find it ironic and like funny when leaders, they come to me and they're like, our culture sucks. Like, and they just shrug it off. Like, why does our culture suck? And I have to give them the bad but true news that, well, the leader sets the culture. The leader sets the tone. And a lot of them, they just don't know it. And so it's very unintentional. They don't see the culture of the team, of their own exec team and their organization, as an extension of how they are leading the team. So if you don't hold anyone accountable at the top, no one else is going to hold anyone else accountable.
Fair. So. That's completely fair. And again, we all want this like courageous leadership. Like I've talked to so many business owners, and I can't imagine a single one of them being like, yeah, I'm not interested in being a courageous leader, right? Like they're not. So talk to me more about this. I think if I read correctly, I think there's 5 phases of courageous leadership. So talk me through those.
Yeah. So the first one is pleasing. And that's really like, there's just you're at like status quo. It's a plateau, like things are going along. They're great. And things are fine. And then there's an inflection point. There's like something external that happens, either within you personally or within the team. Like you lose a big client, you get a big client, whatever it is, but there's something that happens. And then you move into this phase called stirring. And so, if you like, pleasing is like the plateau. This follows the Kubler-Ross curve where it's like there's a plateau, then it's down and then up again, which
Okay.
follows everything in life.
Yeah, super depressing, but very true,
Right. That curve itself, so it's the curve, I'm using the curve. So again, you start kind of at this plateau where like things are fine. And like me personally, I was in that phase for like 15 years. Like it's great. Like I'm getting the paycheck, I'm getting promoted, whatever. But there was an inflection point, and then you start this phase, the second phase, which I call stirring, where you're like, this doesn't feel right. Like I think I think there's a better way. I think there's another way, and and you start doing research or hearing things, and you just start paying attention of like, I was totally in love with this job and this position, and now I'm like, you're stirring, like there's just something going on, but you don't want to listen to that voice, but the voice is there. So your intuition is trying to tell you something, or research or whatever. And then you hit rock bottom. Like you're stirring long enough, you're really just like unsettled, and then you hit a rock bottom. And it's your choice. Again, you don't have to go through all these phases, but you hit a rock bottom, and then the next phase, the rock bottom, is where you say no more. That's a decision point, another inflection point. That's your decision of like, I'm not going to go back to the way things were. I'm not going to go back to being the people pleaser. I may not know what's next, but I know there's something better. And so after you hit rock bottom, you're at the bottom of the curve, worst point. And then
favorite place to be.
Right. And then it's like kind of plateaus a little bit at the bottom too. And that's phase 3, which is planning. And so that there's a better way, and you decided that you're not going to stay in the bad, you want to move forward, but you don't really know what to do yet. And so again, these phases, there's no time limit to it. It's not nice and neat, but there's a planning phase. So for me, it was a lot of personal growth and like reading books. It was my rock bottom. You could say, well, there's a lot of different things, but you could say it was leaving the company. And then I'm like, okay, what's next? And so there's some planning of like, what am I going to do after this? And then phase 4 is rising. So, and it's not a perfect curve, of course, but then I launched my own company. I'm starting to like learn what this is, put curriculum together, effective curriculum, and you start to take action in the rising. And then the 5th stage is courageous leadership. And in the rising, you're making small steps of courage, one at a time. And the difference between rising and actually courageous leadership is that now the courageous leadership is your identity. Like your habits have met up with who you are. And and at that point, you're not going back. Like you can't go back to whatever it was, whether it was a relationship, how you were working, whatever toxic thing you were leaving, there's no option to go back. You know too much. So those are the 5 phases of pleasing, stirring, planning, rising, and then the ultimate, which is the courageous leader.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most frustrating things in business to know that at some point it will always get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just that thing. But obviously, like entrepreneurs are a little bit addicted to it. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep doing it. But let me ask you this, like not everyone that is listening to this or is in a leadership role is like the leader. They've got leaders above them sometimes. And I feel like I could listen to this and be like, okay, Katie, this is all really interesting, but like the owner is not going to be on board with this. So what can I do to go from being like quietly resentful to like, confidently respected within my own team or my organization, even if like the top of the top has not necessarily instilled that culture?
Yeah. Yes. And I get this question a lot too. And even I was just reading the Gallup, the state of the global workforce. I read that report every year. So the 2025 one recently came out. In the US, 69% of employees report being disengaged or actively disengaged in their job. So that's a lot of people. 69%, like over 2/3 of the workforce in the US is disengaged. And by the way, the US actually has the highest engagement rate of the entire world. So
Jesus. Yeah. It's okay if you don't, but do you have the numbers on the active disengagement? Because that's wild.
In the US, it's 18% are actively disengaged.
I mean, that means, like, guys, if you're listening to this, like, I want to put that into perspective. Like, 18% of your team right now hates you. Like, they hate you. They hate your job. They come in every day actively hoping you fail. And they do. And it's more than not caring. Like, you've got a huge problem with people not caring, really big. But these people actually do not want you to succeed. Like, they show up every day, collect their paycheck, and hope that you fail. Like, this is a problem.
Yeah. And then the middle, which is like the 51, 52%, they're disengaged. And so they're just like apathetic, which is arguably worse than disengaged or actively, but like it's not good.
I'd rather have someone just not care than actively try to harm me, but yeah, fair.
Right. Yeah. And you're pointing out something that a lot of people don't understand in the data. The actively disengaged, it's like they're actively rooting against you. You know, their intention, like apathy, it's like, all right, I'm just going to go through the motions, whatever. I try to care, but they've been beaten down, defeated, whatever it is. But they actively disengage is like, I'm going to intentionally do or not do things that could hurt the company. So, and if you are a business owner and if you have 100 employees, that's 18 people. Like, yeah, it's 18 people that are actively working against you, statistically speaking. So that's, like those are wild numbers. And there's a lot of things that have driven it now. And I think being a employee, we have higher expectations now. Like we know more about purpose and meaning and toxicity, and we're willing to set boundaries. And so I would bet, I haven't found data that goes into it at this level, but you know, it all depends on the leader of the company. And so you're less like, if you are a good leader and overall, like, and by good, I mean effective, right? If you are a courageous leader, if you're effective, if you're allowing that debate and that discussion, there's a lot of things that go into it. But when you're a strong, like effective leader, you'll have engaged employees who really just feel valued. And if your team feels valued, it's unlikely you're going to have that 18%. So I don't think that 18% is a peanut butter spread across all companies. I think it goes back to the leader. And if you have a strong leader, you're going to have fewer of those actively disengaged. The issue becomes like, you know, all leaders think they're great leaders.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you think you don't have that 18%, you probably have 30%.
Right. So self-awareness is like, people ask, they're like, so who are the best leaders that work with you? Like, because whenever I talk about my work and what I do, they're like, oh, I could give you a whole list of people that you need to talk to. But I was like, if the leader does not have any self-awareness, they have to have some semblance of self-awareness and a growth mindset. So they're aware that they're not perfect, and then they're willing to learn and grow new things. Then I was like, that's a perfect match. Like that's someone who will grow, and it's less likely that you'll have that 69% unengaged. Not immediately, but yeah. And it also too, like I geek out on data, but like the last point too, when you like really read through the whole report, the one thing it hinges on is it talks specifically about manager disengagement. So the managers being disengaged, there is a 4% drop in manager disengagement. And so that's what's driving the overall employee disengagement. So I'm sure you've worked for an apathetic leader before. It's not inspiring. You don't feel valued. They're not encouraging you or speaking into you. They don't care. So it just reiterates, it all starts at the top from the leader and how you're treating your managers the way down the chain.
Completely agree.
I'll flip off my soapbox for a moment.
No, it's good. And as we're kind of starting to reach the end of our time. So I want to talk about this because I still remember when you said this to me. I remember where I was sitting because it was so interesting. You talked to me about what I think you called like artificial harmony in teams, which is where everything looks good and it seems to be good, but it's not good. And, you know, you were talking to me about like how bad this really is for teams and how dangerous this becomes and how toxic it becomes. And I think like, even without going into depth, I think everyone on like a fundamental level can understand that. Like, yes, an artificially harmonious group is not a good group. It's a dangerous group because things can boil over at any minute. So my question is, how the fuck do we find this? Like, how do we identify this artificially harmonious group? What do we do?
Yeah. So when I was talking about the conflict continuum before, and I was like, we know shame and blame is bad, and like name calling and personal attacks, that's destructive. And then the flip side, the conflict avoidant, that is our artificial harmony. So if you're completely avoiding conflict, then that is artificial harmony. And that is, so the ways to identify it, again, like if you're having the same conversation over and over, like I see this leadership teams, like they have their quarterly offsites and they have like this, you're having a lot of discussion and there's a lot of work, but there's not a lot of progress. So you're not like people aren't clear. You're not making decisions. You keep revisiting decisions as a team over and over from one offsite to the next. So there's no follow through. And it's because the leader isn't driving to a decision and then holding people accountable to it. So how to identify artificial harmony is there's silos, like people aren't working together. They're like, again, they're silos because they're not getting that voice out with each other to like, you're not, again, fostering the conversations with the right people. And then like the communication is terrible. Like, so you'll see it in like turnover, but like the turnover of like good people leave, long-term employees will leave because they're frustrated. Your high performers, the best people, they're going to leave that environment because they're like the high performers can't stand that. Yeah. And so it's not just turnover. Turnover is one indicator, but you have to look into like, who are you losing? Good people? Are you losing your high performers? And that's where the nice leader, the artificial harmony is like, oh, well, we wish you the best. We want what's best for you, rather than, oh my gosh, you're a high performer. What can we do to make you stay? So that's another thing too. Like they don't take responsibility for anything. So there's no accountability, there's no responsibility. And ultimately it comes down to, there's no trust in leadership. And so if you are the leader, you have to have you have to be open to like inviting people, like who are the truth seekers that are the truth tellers in your life that'll tell you that this is wrong. And the leader ultimately has to decide, do I believe this or not? And the place that I left, they did not believe it. So I went off to find a new one.
It worked out well for you. Maybe not so much for them. Katie, you've been amazing. We're almost out of time. So yes. Before you do go, what does it mean to you to level up?
It means there's two parts. One is you have to think different. Like there is a better way. So think different. And two is act on it. Like make a decision and act. Don't stay in that stirring phase, but actually like make a plan and execute it. And it just can be the smallest step at a time.
That's gorgeous. And you're amazing. You're so fantastic. I am so grateful that I met you. I am going to drop Katie's info in the show notes in case any of you actually want to make some changes in terms of your leadership. But Katie, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Katie Armentrout for joining us on the podcast. She's such a different type of leadership coach, and for a really good reason, because there's so many resources out there to talk about how to properly lead a team, how to set goals. But often what we miss is we're just too damn nice. We're avoiding conflict, and as a result, our teams aren't moving forward, and we're not making the growth we should. So maybe we should stop being nice and start getting real. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player.